Have you ever felt drained from always being the nice one? Have you tried helping everyone, only to end up alone with no energy and no peace? You're not alone. There are times when kindness, no matter how beautiful it seems, becomes a burden, and the heart starts crying out for rest, for clarity, for direction. But is saying no a sin? Does setting boundaries mean you're unloving? Billy Graham, one of the most respected voices of the century, spoke boldly about this topic. And today, we're going to dive into this truth with spiritual depth and practical wisdom. Prepare your heart. Because in this video, you'll discover that being kind doesn't mean erasing yourself, and that Jesus, the greatest example of love, didn't live to please people, but to obey the Father. There's a fine line between being kind and being permissive, and that's where discernment comes in. Amanda, a volunteer at a local mission in Calgary, thought she had to say yes to everything: donations, favors, advice, even carrying other people's emotional burdens. But little by little, her heart grew heavy. Kindness without boundaries became a prison. God never asked her to sacrifice her peace for other people's approval. The world applauds kindness, but it doesn't always recognize manipulation disguised as neediness. Toxic people love to get close to soft-hearted souls, and without wisdom, that heart ends up depleted. Discernment is like brakes on a car. It doesn't stop movement. It just prevents unnecessary crashes. Those who walk with commitment to God learn how to love without being consumed in the process. Billy Graham once said that love is an act of courage, not comfort. Real love can say no without guilt. The power of no protects the soul from spiritual burnout and lets kindness flourish without being corrupted. When Amanda learned this, she began to serve with lightness. But can everyone see the difference between genuine love and hidden overload? Kindness in the light of Scripture was never meant to make you a doormat for others to walk on. John, a newly ordained pastor in Montreal, wanted to please every church member. In no time, he was putting out emotional fires, saying yes to everything and barely sleeping. Kindness turned into emotional burden. He mistook being a light for being an always-on power source. True kindness is rooted in wisdom, and wisdom draws clear boundaries. When your motivation is to please people, even good intentions get distorted. Spiritual exhaustion comes quickly, followed by frustration and a sense of uselessness. Toxic people take advantage of vulnerable hearts. Real love knows when to stop. And sometimes, love means not picking up that Sunday night phone call. The Bible doesn't call us to be nice all the time. It calls us to be holy. And being holy includes the power to say no. Jesus aimed to please the Father, not people. So why are we so afraid to disappoint others? Maybe it's because we still don't fully understand what it means to be approved by God. Jesus was pure love, but he wasn't available all the time. On several occasions, he withdrew from the crowds, not out of selfishness, but obedience. He didn't heal under pressure or let himself be manipulated by expectations. That's what commitment to God looks like. Knowing when to speak and when to stay silent, when to help and when to let others grow on their own. Boundaries are signs of spiritual maturity. Imagine if Jesus had tried to please everyone. He wouldn't have gone to the cross. His ministry was led by wisdom and discernment, not by other people's emotional urgency. He knew how to say no with both firmness and grace, and that no carried real love. Even back then, toxic people tried to use him, but they couldn't because he knew their hearts. If even Jesus, the source of all goodness, set boundaries, why do we still think that saying no is unloving? The truth is, lack of boundaries often hides a deep need for approval, and the cost of that eventually is far too high. Discernment isn't about mistrusting everyone, it's about seeing beyond appearances. Maria, a nurse in Vancouver, started noticing that one co-worker only came around when he needed help with shifts, and then disappeared. At first, she thought it was part of her mission. Later, she realized she was being used. That's when she understood the power of spiritual discernment. Kindness without filters turns into a burden. Jesus didn't trust everyone, even those who claimed to follow him. He saw their hearts. That didn't make him cold, it made him wise. Having the wisdom to recognize intentions protects us from unnecessary pain. It's the filter that keeps our souls from being soaked in spiritual exhaustion. Not every emotional need is a ministry opportunity. Sometimes it's just manipulation. Billy Graham used to say that being led by God requires a sharpened spiritual perception, and that only comes with time, scripture, and prayer. Reading Proverbs, for example, is a great place to start. Discernment doesn't push love away. It strengthens it, and it prepares us for what comes next. Those who live to please others lose themselves. Little by little, they stop listening to God's voice and start following the voice of the crowd. The silence of truth sets in when the fear of disappointing others becomes louder than conviction, and that's one of the most subtle paths to spiritual burnout. The soul begins to wither slowly, until one day you look in the mirror and don't recognize who's staring back. The constant need for approval consumes you. It turns genuine love into a form of emotional currency. If I'm good enough, they'll love me. But that's not love. It's emotional servitude. Toxic people thrive on this. They manipulate with looks and unspoken expectations. The power of no is what sets us free. Because saying yes to everyone is often saying no to yourself, and sometimes to God. People-pleasing has become a modern idol, but what God desires from us is obedience, not performance. And sometimes obedience will hurt. It will challenge. It will bring criticism, but it will also bring peace, the kind that only comes when your heart is aligned with heaven. Be careful. Trying to please everyone is a trap disguised as a virtue. At first, it seems noble, but eventually it becomes a burden. Sarah, a young ministry leader in Toronto, thought it was her job to keep everyone happy. The result? Emotional burnout, hidden tears, and the urge to give it all up. What started as service became a prison. Jesus never asked for that. He never said, "Go and earn the approval of the Pharisees." Quite the opposite. Being a disciple means choosing God's approval over people's validation, and that often comes with rejection. Yes, even from those we love. But true love isn't built on instant acceptance. It endures even when the world pulls away. Real kindness isn't about pleasing others, it's about pointing them toward truth, even if they don't like it. Because what sets us free isn't charm, it's truth. And sometimes that truth comes with a no on your lips and wisdom in your eyes. Jesus told us to be as wise as serpents and as innocent as doves. In other words, sharp but pure. Wisdom without innocence becomes cold. Innocence without wisdom becomes naive. And it's in that balance that the beauty of walking with God is found. Not everyone who smiles at you has good intentions. There are wolves in sheep's clothing, and without discernment, the flock becomes a field for exploitation. Scripture urges us to stay alert. That doesn't mean being suspicious of everyone. It means developing spiritual sensitivity. Reading James, praying for discernment, looking at someone's fruit instead of their promises. That's maturity. Billy Graham warned, the enemy doesn't come with horns, he comes with smooth talk. Wisdom is knowing when something looks like it's from God but isn't. Kindness is a powerful tool, but only when guided by discernment. Without it, we become victims of our own soft hearts. And the next trap might come dressed as affection. Wisdom doesn't have to kill gentleness. You can be strong without losing your kindness. The challenge is keeping your heart clean in a world that constantly tries to stain it. Jesus was firm without bitterness. He stood against evil without letting love burn out. That's spiritual maturity. Real love doesn't get tainted, it purifies. As Christians, we can't become cynical. We must learn to protect ourselves without building emotional walls that no one can get through. Purity isn't naivety, it's a choice. It's looking evil in the eye and saying, I won't become like you. Wisdom protects. Innocence preserves. And together they make faith something admirable, not fragile. So how do you stay pure in such a toxic world? Do what Jesus did. Withdraw to pray. Set boundaries. Keep your eyes open. Because the next test might come wrapped in a compliment. Speaking the truth hurts. Saying what needs to be said makes people uncomfortable. The prophets knew it. The apostles knew it. And let's be honest, we feel it in our own skin when we stand for something that comes from God. Standing for eternal values in a world of shifting truths has a price, but that's where we find out if our commitment to God is real or just pretty words. The world rejects what it can't control. Truth is uncomfortable because it's light, and light exposes the mess. So expect resistance, criticism, even sideways glances from inside the church, but also expect the peace of knowing you're right in the center of God's will. And that peace, oh, it's worth more than any like or social approval. Billy Graham used to say, the gospel offends, and it needs to offend, because it shakes things up. So if you're being criticized for standing firm, congratulations. You might be more like Jesus than you think. Compassion is beautiful, but when it's led only by emotion, it turns into chaos. Jesus was never controlled by people's emotional demands. He helped because he listened to the Father, not because he felt pity. That changes everything, because when you help without direction, you become a slave to other people's expectations. And in the end, someone who was meant to be an answer becomes tired and lost. Helping without wisdom leads to enabling, and that feeds toxic patterns. How many times have you tried to save someone only to realize they didn't want change, just company in their pain? Discernment teaches us when to help, when to step back, and when to simply pray. That's not coldness, it's spiritual. Alignment, it's saying, Lord, show me the role you want me to play here. Want to help with wisdom? Start by seeking direction in prayer. Ask, Lord, is this mine or yours? And remember, even the Good Samaritan had to move on. After helping, true love knows how to serve and when to stop. Now tell me honestly, how many times have you stayed silent to avoid conflict, even when your heart was burning with truth? How many times have you said yes out of fear of seeming selfish, even when everything inside you was crying out, no? Today, you've discovered that the power of no isn't rebellion, it's wisdom. That true commitment to God requires discernment, that love doesn't mean tolerating manipulation, and that even Jesus set boundaries out of love for his mission. So, what are you going to do with all of this? Will you keep carrying emotional burdens that were never yours to begin with? Or will you start protecting your peace, your energy, and your intimacy with God? What would your life look like if you stopped trying to please everyone and started living with focus, freedom, and true love? If this message touched your heart, if it helped you see a truth that had been hidden, share it with someone who needs to hear this today. And of course, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and stay close. There's much more wisdom coming your way, the kind that transforms the heart and renews the spirit.